This is a good question from Ryan. Is it more important for us to get an Elite Four or an Elite 2-3? How do you prioritize that?
I think it's more important to get an Elite Four because the Elite Two, I feel like, I don't know, because the hole at the 4 position for the Pistons is so wide. It's really like we're playing at a deficit every game, whoever we play in at the 4 spot. That's why I think it's more important, because you can play Cade at the 2 or the 3. You can play Asar at the 2 or the 3. You can throw Jaden Ivey at the 2. You can throw Alec Burks. You can throw Marcus Sasser. Like, you have options at those positions on the Pistons. I would still like them to upgrade at the 3 spot, whether it's the draft or whether it's through free agency. But in my opinion, the 4 spot it has been a weakness for the Pistons for a couple of years now. And you're really never going to be able to compete until you find a player to fill that position. And I've said it before, I don't think it's Isaiah Stewart. I think he'd be better coming off the bench. Like, Isaiah Stewart would be a really good 8th man on a play-in and on a playoff team. I think he'd be like a 9 or 10 man on a contender. So, but he's a starter for the Pistons. That just should tell you how bad it is at that position. So 4 is more important to me.
I think that an Elite 4 man right now is so rare in the NBA, because if you look around the NBA, there's more Elite 2s and Elite 3s than there are 4s. But to answer your question, Ryan, what's more important? I would say the 4 position, just because I don't really think I think Duren is just going to be a center. I know, like, you've heard Troy and Monty say, oh, he could play power forward. I think he's just going to be a center, and that's fine. And to kind of go even further, there's a 4 that's going to be a free agent that I think the Pistons need to consider targeting, in my opinion, and that's Pascal Siakam. I know he's not on perimeter, but I think, to me, he would help this team out a lot.
Okay, let me just throw out a couple names at the 4 position. You tell me if you still think it's not that elite. Giannis, I don't know why they have Anthony Davis listed there, but they have Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Zion, Lauri Markkanen, Sabonis, Holmgren, Paul George, Julius Randle, Evan Mobley, Jaren Jackson Jr., Pascal Siakam, Paolo Banchero, Bobby Portis, Tobias Harris, Aaron Gordon, Draymond Green. Those are some pretty elite names, don't you think, at the 4? And then when I'm looking at the 2 guards, like, yeah, you got Devin Booker, Anfernee Simons, Donovan Mitchell, James Harden, even though he's 35, Desmond Bane, but then there's kind of a drop-off to, like, Terry Rozier, CJ McCollum, Lonnie Walker, Emmanuel Quickley, Bogdanovich, Alex Caruso. I think the 4 position, I think it's maybe I don't know. I just feel like the 2 guard is kind of weak in the NBA right now. There's a lot of fun guys, and there's a bunch of names that I missed. I just think the 2, you can get away with an average 2 in the NBA, but you can't get away with an average 4 in today's NBA.
Yeah, I was just saying it's more difficult to get those guys. Not that it's not an elite skill or it's not an elite position. I think it's more difficult to find those elite 4s. Now, whether you want to say Jeremy Grant was an elite 4, I'll leave that up to you guys. There's this subpar guys like Julius Randle, but Julius Randle has had a really good season. I mean, there's guys like Anthony Davis who, if you want to say he's a power forward, center, whatever, he's an elite player. I mean, not Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, even though he's a center, he's playing the 4. He's still an all-star. I think it's harder to find those 4s because so many teams, have them locked up on contracts.
I agree.
Yeah, like Lauri Markkanen, who we've talked about ad nauseum. I think we've been talking about Lauri Markkanen since last season, and now people are just kind of getting on track. Let's go trade for Lauri Markkanen. I think, to me, he's the only 4 that's actually realistic, that where you could try to trade for Lauri Markkanen. I just think now all these teams around the NBA want him because
Yeah.
he's valuable, because, he's a guy that can stretch the floor, score some buckets, but defensively, he's not locked down. But he's playable at least. But, finding a legitimate power forward in today's NBA is very difficult. I mean, you look at the power forwards that are unrestricted free agents this summer. You have Tobias Harris, Pascal Siakam, former Piston Kelly Olynyk, Robert Covington, Kyle Anderson, Thaddeus Young, Danilo Gallinari, Taurean Prince, Markieff Morris, Dario Saric, James Johnson, who's not a free agent. He just got signed by the Pacers. Bol, Anthony Gill, who retired, Kenya Martin Jr., and Luka Samick. I mean, that list is pretty bleak outside of like Tobias and Pascal. There's some, average bench players that possibly you could sign. But, I mean, the Pistons want to upgrade that position. I think Pascal would be at the top of my wish list if I'm a Piston fan watching this.